at this time, over.
It just kept getting bigger and bigger and darker and darker.
There's a large amount of debris coming up from the ground.
It was huge. I don't know how big, but it looked at one time at least a quarter mile across at the bottom, and it was getting bigger all the time.
Just after 8 last night, a tornado touches down in Seward County.
Looked like a little dust storm started to form in the field. Sat there for approximately 3 to 5 minutes, built up a little power.
Enough strength to take down power lines.
Lots of power lines down and phone lines.
Pick up farm machinery.
Twisted it up like it was a toy.
And throw debris everywhere.
All the wind, swirling around and everything was just flying, in the field. And it stopped there and just sat, and we just got to watch it, and it was just amazing.
There's got to be at least an F2, F3.
Witnesses say the tornado was a mile wide. When it made its way through this area, it tossed these propane tanks, large and small. Fire and rescue crews worked overnight to find out the source of the leak and get it shut off.
Don't know if it's explosive or not.
It's bad. It was a very large storm. Very large storm.
Okay, this here's a tree that the beaver were doing some damage on.
Ralph Kell has lived 50 years on the edge of Lincoln.
And now you couldn't shoot a BB gun around here without hitting somebody.
This pond went in years ago.
And almost immediately we started running into some problems with the beavers.
So wildlife specialist Ron Stetson is brought in.
This is a beaver lure.
The beaver have chewed up dozens of Ralph Kell's trees. So Stetson will live trap.
And what's going to happen is a beaver would swim up here, get curious to sniff this, and step on the paddle, and this cage comes up and closed like a clam.
Beaver signs are everywhere. Tree after tree chewed down, an entire cluster taken in one morning. It's not easy to catch them. Stetson says beaver are smarter than people think.
They've been here, they know the terrain a lot better. Got the trees and
catching them is a lot of hard work.
There's a dam here where they've caused some damming right over here.
This beaver dam sits just a few hundred yards from Hidden Valley Golf Course, and it's strong.
There's a lot of places where they blow those.
But it's the gnawed trees that most concern Ralph Kell.
I planted 100 and some green ash trees up by this other pond, and they just went right down the row and took all of them.
They got one beaver this morning. We'll show you the tail only. The beaver are sometimes snared.
And when the beaver comes through, his head's going to go through here, and this could wrap around his shoulders.
The beaver trails are everywhere down the slope toward the pond.
I can see that he's came down here.
This drain pipe is a big draw. It goes from the pond to a nearby creek.
So the beaver are very smart and adapt to their environment.
There are a few things landowners can do besides trap the beaver.
He wrapped the wire around it to stop the beaver from doing the damage to that tree.
Otherwise, it's a tough battle. In Lincoln with photographer Eric Allmann, Chris on 1011 News.
They're cranking it up right now, and you start at about 4 to 7 miles an hour. We're now up to 8 to 10 miles an hour. Moderate breeze, 13 to 18 miles an hour. It feels nice, actually, refreshing on a summer day. But as they crank up this machine higher, you can tell that it starts to get a lot louder. I'll get a lot louder too, so you can continue to hear me. We're now at 38 miles an hour. This is the strength of a tropical depression. Keep in mind, we're still not at tropical storm strength. Now we are. It takes at least 39 miles an hour to get up to tropical storm strength. But we are still a long ways away from being at hurricane strength. Right now, we're up to 63 miles an hour. We still have to get up to 74 miles an hour before you consider this hurricane strength. Look at me now. It's actually difficult to stand up, and we are still not at hurricane strength. Now we are getting up there. One violent storm. We are at 74 miles an hour. As you can see from these bulging veins in my neck, I was screaming at the top of my lungs, but I may as well have been whispering. My ears were flapping, but they were of no use. All I could hear was the roar. That's when I realized that ear protection they suggested in the beginning would have helped. I can't hear myself anymore! I also found out why those goggles would have been a good idea too. Tiny dust particles can sting your eyes when the wind whips them at you this fast. But the toughest part of all was walking. Remember, under normal circumstances, the museum requires people to sit down inside this exhibit, and the wind tunnel is shut down if somebody stands up. Now I know why. As I moved toward the source of the wind, each step took an extraordinary amount of effort. The force of the wind allowing me to get diagonal, standing at a severe angle on my toes. I also found I could bend in ways that I wasn't quite used to. What's most amazing is that this 74-mile-an-hour wind is technically the weakest wind a hurricane produces. When Hurricane Andrew hit Miami in 1992, it produced wind gusts twice as strong, some as high as 155 miles an hour. After several minutes of being face-to-face with this force, in fact, even the skin on my face was whipping in the wind, it was finally time to shut things down and catch my breath.
I'm so proud of you.
Thanks. How are you doing?
I always knew you'd do something special.
World hero here that lives in our hometown.
What began as a terrifying mid-air collision has now turned Lieutenant Shane Osborne into a Nebraska hero.
I'm viewing myself as a guy that got to help get 23 people back to their families. That's how I view myself.
Now as Shane made his way through a lot of these streets, a lot of people knew him. It's a town of about 22,000. They're glad to see him, and they're glad to have him back.
As an old Navy man, it makes me feel pretty proud.
I think it's exciting for the kids to see that patriotism is still very important in our country.
I hope you don't ride as bad as I do.
That's okay.
I think it just shows that small-town America is still the heart of this nation.
Despite what's going on here today, Osborne says he's still keeping tabs on his plane and the negotiations between the U.S. and China.
If we get it back, that's great. If we don't, we don't. It's up to the politicians and the governments to negotiate that one out. Did you get out of school for this, or was it time for school to be out already?
It's time for school to be out.
Oh, sorry.
We're in one of them now, Boswell Observatory, built in 1883. We still have a working telescope, the original telescope. Our founder, Thomas Doane, was a civil engineer for the Burlington, Missouri River Railroad, and we have a lot of his equipment here.
Boswell now serves as a museum and a classroom.
Thomas Doane, gained some fame with his engineering abilities, so he brought this back to Doane, and it's been outfitted for astronomy. Let's open that a little ways. And you can see our telescope. It can push and pull and rotate the dome so that you can position the telescope at whatever direction you need to have it. This really does a pretty fine job yet. The beginning astronomy classes often come here. We can still see quite a few of the constellations. There's some trees that get in the way, but old telescope, I mean, this is 1884, so that's a significant age, 116 years old. Crash.
Except for a few years while he was in the service, Allmann Wedekind has farmed this land near Lindsay all his life.
Hard work, and then, boy, the times are kind of tough. I mean, it's really stressful here lately. Try to make ends meet.
But recently, Allmann has been able to forget about some of that stress. That's because this 6-foot-tall moose has holed up on the Wedekind farm. And Nebraska is not exactly considered moose country.
I don't know why this is any different than most any other farm to whole northeast Nebraska, but he comes here and stays here. Well, and he left for a week and come back here. That's the amazing part.
Nicknamed Seymour, this moose wandered onto the Wedekind farm January 3rd. For more than 3.5 months, Seymour has been living off the land, eating the corn and beans and drinking their water, not to mention making new friends.
He's been in with the milk cows, and he doesn't stay there long. I think he thinks they're boring, but he was in a pen full of calves over in the other place, and there was some young bull calves, and they were butting heads together with him and chasing each other and playing, just having a gay old time.
They're not exactly sure where Seymour came from, probably Minnesota. Our photographer Eric Allmann got up close and personal with Seymour, and remember, that is a wild animal. With Eric getting his shot and keeping his distance, the beast started to approach. But Eric held his ground, trying not to startle the animal with any sudden movements. Later, it appears Seymour was just looking for some face time, hamming it up for the camera. Now, although they think Seymour came from Minnesota, no one is exactly sure.
Possibly up north, wherever mooses live.
It's hard to tell how long Seymour will stay, although it doesn't appear that he'll go anywhere soon.
Old-fashioned fighter planes fill the air near Wahoo today, and 10 11's photographer Eric Allmann takes a step back in time with the sights and sounds of a World War II dogfight.
We're out here giving rides to the general public, actually flight instruction. All of our pilots are instructors, so everybody that goes up, we actually teach how to fly this aircraft. 9 years, 10 years that we've been flying, we've flown probably somewhere around 7,000 vets. It's really neat to talk to them and listen and to understand what exactly they did for us.
We've heard stories for the last, I don't know how many years, about WW2 and the big one, and he used to fly one of these back then, and we've got pictures of him at home when he was in the Army in one of these planes.
It's been 30-some years, I suppose, since I've been in one. As soon as he got took off, he handed it over to me. I said, "You got to be kidding me." You know, after like riding a horse, after you rode one once, you rode it, you'll never forget.
We try to make it to where it's a family event.
I just enjoy planes and always wanted to fly and go up in one of these old birds. I flew it for a while. I didn't do any of the aerobatics though. If they're not visually impaired, it's hard to explain things because it's so different. I'm just sitting right up there in the seat flying, and I go for the feel. Like flying from the seat of your pants, you know.
We are doing some air combat courses, which is the dogfighting.
Fight is on. All right, up and over we go. That's it. This is a barrel roll. I'm going to bring it right up into a barrel roll and right on down the other side. It's like going around a barrel, just like that.
Awesome. Yeah. You know, you just can't describe what opportunity that you feel when you come back out of that dogfight. I mean, you come around, you go for the kill, and it's just like that second time we lined up. I came around, I thought, I got you. Bang, next thing I know, I'm upside down going into a spin.
The smiles on the faces of the customers when they get out of the plane. I've never had a customer get out of the plane upset. It makes everything worthwhile.
Level, and it is more of a hometown.
And federal dollars into this area for the construction of the